Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Saturday, October 11th, 2025. And again, a little bit chilly this morning. I don't know what's going on. It's supposed to be, mid-October. And I think it's going to be like 13 or 14 degrees here today. It's only about 6 at the moment. So anyway, a little bit happening on the boxing scene. Good stuff and bad stuff, I suppose. Let's start with on this day. Let's go back to, for starters, 1992. Mexico's Ricardo Lopez defended his world strawweight title with a knockout of Rocky Lin in the second round in Japan. 2002 in Italy, Wayne Braithwaite won the world cruiserweight title with the knockout of Italy's Vincenzo Cantatore in the 10th round. And in 2008 in Berlin, Germany, Ukraine's Vitaly Klitschko knocked out Nigeria's Samuel Peter in the 9th round, and that was for the world heavyweight title. So that is what happened on this day. All right, on to the news of the last sort of 24 hours. I'll get to the Australian stuff first, and I'll get to the world stuff. But there has been a claim from Jai Pataya's promoter and manager, Mick Francis, that there was obviously been a lot of ongoing talks between Mick and Eddie Hearn in conjunction with Oscar De La Hoya at Golden Boy about Jai fighting Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez at some stage for the undisputed, well not, no it wouldn't be undisputed because Badou Jack's got the WBC belt, but a unification fight, 3 of the belts. Jai, you can just see he's just bursting for that fight, just itching for it. And unfortunately Ramirez, who obviously is injured at the moment, so there's not much he can do, but he fought just a few months ago, but has so far played hard to get and has reportedly asked for $8 million US, which equates to about 12 million Australian dollars. Now that is obviously just ridiculous money. I'm not a bean counter with all these big fights, but I'm assuming that I think the most they would probably get is sort of maybe 1.5. I'm just guessing, but no more than 2 anyway. And he wants 12, well, sorry, I'll go in US dollars, but $8 million US / 12 million Australian dollars. So Mick, he hasn't been around a long time, but he's been around long enough to know the boxing game as well as he needs to at this stage. And that is obviously a guy that is I'm not going to, well, you can't cast aspersions. You don't know what's going through his head, but that to me looks like the sign of a guy and promotional firm that doesn't want to fight Jai Pataya. Now, I don't know why. Maybe they're just trying to prolong the fight. Maybe they're trying to save face and everything, but they're maybe waiting for David Benavidez to go up. Maybe they're waiting for just to get a soft kill in Badou Jack. I don't know. Not that that would be a soft kill because Badou Jack's not a bad fighter, but he's 41 years of age. So it just all points to the fact that they do not want to fight Jai Pataya. It's like any negotiation, you go back and forth, but it's always reasonable. And then you just get the laughable ones like this. I mean, we're all going through it at the moment, the AFL, with it's the trade period, and I'm sure the NRL will go through it as well. It's about negotiating, but you do it in good faith with the common goal of getting the deal done. But you do it in a reasonable fashion. And sometimes it doesn't happen because it just might be one wants slightly overs and the other one's not prepared to give, and you get that. But when you're so far off the mark in this instance, where you're looking at, probably 4 to 5 times more money than the fight is actually worth, you've got to ask questions. And I can understand the frustration from Jai's end, because, I mean, you've got to remember from Jai's perspective, he'd be banging the fist on the table to Mick Francis and Eddie Hearn saying, geez, just get this fight done. It's not that easy, of course. He doesn't sit in the negotiations and have to sit across from the Golden Boy crew, and they've been around a long time as well, of course. They and they're looking out for their best fighters' interests, but it just looks to me that is a fight that they're just not keen to make. If they were, they'd be saying, all right, well, let's start at 2.5 and we can work our way back, and maybe he gets 1.75 or something like that, and Jai takes $1 million or 1.25, whatever it might be. But either way, you're in the same sort of ballpark. And this isn't even the same sport at the moment, is it, with what they're talking about? So I can understand Mick and Jai's frustration. I'm sure Eddie Hearn's frustrated as well, although maybe they need the intervention of His Excellency, as they say, Turki Al Sheikh, who apparently sat down with Jai in Las Vegas and said, right, this is what we're going to do. And he actually rang Zurdo Ramirez's team while Jai was sitting there, which is something you don't sort of see too often, but I suppose that's the way they roll over there. It's like, hey, let's just get the deal rolling. So the word was that it would be Sin Cara next, and then possibly Badou Jack, and then it would be Ramirez, and then it would be David Benavides. So that's the 4-fight plan. So at least he's got the first fight sort of penciled in, and I'll get to that card again. It's had another really good addition. So you would think the next one would be Badou Jack, but I mean, this is a guy that fights very, very rarely. So I think the best thing almost for Badou Jack would be to do is to either say, like, I'll either want Jai or Zurdo or even David Benavides, or just retire. 41 years of age, has really just held the belt up for the last 2 or 3 years. I know he's got the rematch coming up. Is it Noel McCallion or whatever his name is? The odds are he could actually lose that fight, which could actually be a good thing, because you would think, just listen to this McCallion talk, he looks like he means business and wants to really do something in the cruiserweight division. He's 35 years old, so he's probably looking to maybe rush into some bigger fights, and maybe Jai could maybe turn his attention to him next, and then, you know, focus on Ramirez after that. Because with 2 of the belts, and Ramirez would have 2 of the belts, it does put a lot of pressure on them to actually come to the table and talk, and let's get a fight made. But again, I've said, if I was Jai, I'd be saying, all right, enough of this crap. Let's call out David Benavides. Let's see what happens with Benavides and Beterbiev and Bivol. What happens with those guys at light heavyweight? And if nothing's going on, calling him out, put him up to 200 at cruiserweight, and let's get another big fight. Because he's adamant he wants to unify the division. This is Jai. So they've really got to start sort of putting the foot down at 30 years of age. I won't say time's running out, but I think he would want to be unified within the next 2 years, and then move up at 32 years of age and maybe have a good sort of 4 or 5 year stint at heavyweight. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, just speaking of his card, on the 6th of December against Sin Cara, really good addition to the card. We've got Jake Wiley and Paul Fleming. I saw it come through yesterday, part of a WhatsApp group with Mick's sort of social media team. He sort of sends stuff out to, and I saw it come through and I thought, yes. Then, of course, I had about 8 people send me the link, which is great. I really love it when you guys are onto it for me and send me all these bits of information. But I did see it, and my first thought was, wow, I thought the card was set. I thought it was done. And when I saw that fight come up, that is a really good addition. And there is actual word that even Sky Nicholson might be on that card. So at the moment, there's 9 fights. So I'm not quite sure. Look, it'd be great if Mick and, I suppose, Eddie, who obviously promotes Sky, got her on that card as just to keep her busy. But I mean, as far as the quality and depth of the card goes, I really don't need much more. I mean, every fight obviously costs money. Even a Sky Nicholson fight would probably cost them, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 to put on the card. And they don't, well, probably more even, but they probably don't need to do it. But if they do, then look, you got to take the hat off to Mick and, I suppose, Eddie by association for stacking these cards. Now I know there's a few fights on the card that might be a bit how you're going, but the top end of the card looks really solid. I'm not quite sure who will be co-main and all the rest of it, what the order will be, but it doesn't really matter. It's got to be good. So I would think that, I mean, looking at the card at the moment, I think on the main card, you would definitely have Ben Mahoney, Winston Hill, Jake Wiley, Paul Fleming will be good, Justice Honey, of course, and Kiko Latelli, and then Jason Maloney, Herlin Gonzalez. I would think they would be the 4 undercard fights to the Jai Petaia fight. But then you've got Max McIntyre on there as well, Austin Akuso on there as well. So it's going to be a tough one. And look, I think it's great. And I think without sort of taking sides of who's the better or not, I think No Limit could actually have a look at this card and go, well, this is the sort of cards we should be doing. And I don't, again, want to take sides and everything else, but I just think this is the way you put on a fight card not some of the stuff we've seen from No Limit lately. And I'm hoping that they really sort of learn from the last couple of shows they've put on and really just up the game. Because, I mean, No Limit used to be, not only the number one promoter in Australia, but they really backed it up with some really, really good shows. And I just touched on yesterday some of the really good Aussie fights they could put on there. And I just don't think they need to spend as much money as they do on these really second-rate imports they've been bringing in. Put the money into the Aussie fights. Aussie fans, if you have one good main event with, if it's an import as well, if it's Nikita or Michael Zarafa or whoever it might be, and Tim, of course, put them in with the international, that's fine. Do what you used to do and stack the undercard with good Aussie fights. Put the money into that. I think that is the way to the hearts of Australian boxing fans. Stack the undercard with Aussies versus Aussies in 50-50 fights, or even 55-45, I don't care. But at the moment, we're getting 80-20 fights, or 90-10 sometimes, in my opinion. So, again, I'm not saying the Tasman card is 100% perfect, but it's got some really good, solid fights on there that are at least going to be competitive and entertain the fans that are going to probably pay $50 or whatever it is to pay for the card. So, really good to see Paul Fleming back, I will say. And so he did, I'm assuming, get the itch after the exhibition with Billy Dibb. He's a really good guy too, Paul Fleming, and I'm actually glad that he's sort of having one last crack at it, because he's always had a lot to offer. I know he's had a few dramas outside the ring, but he's always been super talented. And in another world, who knows, could have been fighting for world titles and been on the international stage, but for one reason or another, it just didn't work out for him. His last official fight was Charlie Suarez, who ended up getting that shot at Navarrete. So it's a lot of sliding doors in boxing, and unfortunately, Charlie Suarez, who beat Paul, went on to a world title shot, and Paul hasn't fought since. That was probably about 2.5 years ago from memory. So, but yeah, if he comes in anywhere near his best, the fight with Jake Wiley will be a ripper. I'm a real fan of young Jake, and this will probably give us a little bit of an indication of where he sits and whether he can maybe take the next step. Of course, he was very competitive against George Kambosos, gave as good as he got, but end of the day, George did win the fight clearly. So, but this is another real good step up for him, and I'm really glad that he's fighting often. He wants to fight the real good fighters in his division. And even though Paul Fleming hasn't fought in 2.5 years, I think he will give Jake Wiley a really good fight and entertain us. Come here, buddy. And really entertain the people again tuning in. So, as I said, a really, really good addition to that card. What else is happening here? Yes. On the international news. And is it any big surprise? Sebastian Fundora and Keith Thurman has been postponed. It's a real shame, actually. I was really looking forward to the fight. The big surprise, though, is not that it's been postponed. It's the fact that it's Sebastian Fundora who is injured. I think I've been sort of waiting for something to happen to Keithy, for him to do himself a mischief, as they say. But he's been okay. And Sebastian Fundora, apparently it's a hand injury. They didn't really specify exactly what it was. But, I mean, geez, what are we, 2 weeks out? So I don't know what he's been doing. And normally 2 weeks before the fight, you're sort of tapering down. And I'm assuming he's still sparring. Maybe it's happened during a spar. But you would think that if he's just doing pad work and some conditioning work, that pretty hard to injure your hand. So, yeah, as I said, I'm assuming it was done sparring. But, it's a shame. As I said, I was really looking forward to the card. I was really looking forward to seeing how Keith Thurman went in another big fight. I know he looked great against Brock Jarvis, but this is the big time that he was going to at the MGM Grand, and whether he could sort of rewind the clock and dethrone Sebastian Fundora. And a lot of people actually gave him a big chance to beat Fundora. I personally did, and I think that Sebastian Fundora would probably do like he's done to nearly all but one of his opponents and frustrate them with the height and reach and the work rate and everything else and get the job done. But either way, it's a bit of a shame. Come here, man. Don't run across that road, little bugger. The only question I will ask on the Fundora and Thurman situation, though, is when it happened, 15 days out, there was no attempt to salvage the show at all. I mean, there's a really good undercard underneath it, headlined by Sharky Foster and Stephen Fulton, and Jesus Ramos Jr. and Shane Mosley Jr. And I'm really surprised that they didn't try and get a replacement. I mean, you think back to when Tim Tszyu fought Sebastian Fundora. Of course, Thurman had to pull out of that, and they had pretty much a replacement within 24 hours. I know Sebastian Fundora was on the undercard, so it was easy to do. But even in this situation here, you've got, say, Jesus Ramos Jr., who I'm sure, I know it's a middleweight fight, but I'm sure that maybe they could have worked something out with Keith Thurman to have him fight Keith Thurman on the card and elevate Stephen Fulton and O'Shaquie Foster to the main event. I know it's a pay-per-view, so it makes it complicated with trying to keep people on the hook as far as them buying the pay-per-view. But there was another, I think there's another 10-rounder super welterweights on the undercard. I can't remember who it was, but maybe they could have elevated one of those guys to fight Keith Thurman. They did it on the Fundora card with Tim. He was supposed to fight, was he supposed to fight Bolchuk? I think he was. And Bolchuk ended up fighting Brian Mendoza. And looking back at that card, what an awesome card that was. I mean, at the time it got a lot of flack. Is that the word? Flack? A lot of criticism. But having Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu as the main event, Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero on the as the chief support, Michael Zarafa as Andy Lara. And Fundora was supposed to, initially supposed to fight, as I said, Bolchuk, but he ended up fighting Mendoza. So it ended up being a really, really good card. And I reckon there was another world title fight in there as well with the little fellas. So good in hindsight anyway. But yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't say, all right, well, let's just elevate one of the lesser guys on the undercard up, whether it be Mosley Jr., Ramos Jr., or the other super welterweights, and at least give Keith Thurman a fight, get him paid. And then, as I said, elevate Fulton and Foster to the main event. And maybe they could have even taken off the pay-per-view portion of it. I mean, it's still an okay fight, or really maybe put the pay-per-view down to half the price or whatever it might be, because people are still screaming for content. They still want fights. So, and I think a lot of people would say, all right, that fight's off, but at least we've still got Foster and Fulton, and we've got some other undercard fights on, and it's only going to cost me, say, $30. I'm sure they would still buy the pay-per-view. But anyway, they've made that call. Maybe there might be a few gremlins in there where the card hasn't been selling that well, and there's a few problems with the finances, and all of a sudden Sebastian Fundora gets a hand injury, and they just pull the whole card. These things do happen. So, but yeah, either way, it's a shame. It is. They've postponed the whole event. I mean, if it's a hand injury, it could be 2 or 3 months down the track. So, especially with the Christmas period coming up, so this fight could be, say, in February, which would be a real shame. The other thing I'm just thinking they could maybe do is Manny Pacquiao supposed to be fighting Rolly Romero January 24th. It might make sense to actually put it on that card and have a really solid big event. So to have Pacquiao and Romero, Fundora and Thurman and the undercard under that. So anyway, hopefully that does happen, and it's only a couple of months sort of turnaround. But you got to feel for these fighters, because just to have the rug pulled out, they've got massive expenses as far as training camps and everything like that go. I know they get paid well, but not everyone does. The undercard fighters might not be getting paid that much, and by the time they've had to put up the camp in Vegas, it is in Vegas, yeah, so putting them up and got to pay for all the food and sparring partners and all that sort of stuff, it gets pretty costly, and all of a sudden, no fight. So not good at all. But anyway, we'll see what happens with that. Another cancellation, looks like Artur Beterbiev has pulled out of his next fight, and I can't remember the guy who was going to fight. I did have it written down, but I can't be bothered getting it out of my pocket at the moment. But he's apparently out. So he was going to be on the undercard of who was it, David Benavidez and Anthony Yard. Now that is off, and not that should affect the card too much, but maybe you think that there could be other factors in play. Maybe Bivol is back and has said, look, because he's obviously out for the year with the operation, maybe he said, look, I'm going to be back around February or March, and they might hold him back for that. Who knows? But either way, Beterbiev, it looks like that fight is off with his next opponent. Now, just to end on a bit of a sad note, of course, yesterday was the funeral of Ricky Hatton. Really, really sad. I saw a bit of the footage from Manchester. The whole town was sort of painted sort of blue, a lot of balloons and streamers and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure they had streamers, but you know what I mean. A lot of blue and white getting around for the Manchester City team that he just loved with a passion, Ricky did. And it was really sad to see his son and his brother and some other people carrying the coffin along. To think that this is such an icon of the sport, and this is how it ended for him. But a lot of love for Ricky, and you know, if you sort of didn't follow boxing a lot back then, you can't sort of get your head around the impact that he had on boxing, especially in England. Just the fan base that he had, the energy in the build-up to his fights, the energy on fight night, and the energy of the fight itself. It wasn't a great night for us when he beat Costa Tszyu, but over there, I mean, it's still one of the most treasured moments in British boxing history, and a special night for him. But as I've spoken about in other videos, he did have his demons outside the ring, which a lot of people unfortunately have. Couldn't really fill the void of being out of the spotlight, and had some issues with drugs and alcohol, and he had family splits, and even though still heavily involved in boxing, could never really get his head right. And but just such a tragic event to see such a beloved figure driving or getting driven in the coffin down the main street of Manchester with so many fans around to mourn him. Yeah, it was really, really sad. And it's been a tough year for boxing, hasn't it, with what's happened with the loss of so many stars. And as I said, I've said again in past videos, I remember going to see Ricky Hatton fight Manny Pacquiao in Las Vegas. It was my first ever big fight that I'd been to over there. I just went over there by myself. Got totally immersed in the week. British boxing fans just everywhere. They took over the strip. And of course, being an Aussie, I just got confused for being a Brit, so I just went with it. Anyone asked me, the Americans, are you from England to see Ricky Hatton? After about 10 times saying, no, I'm from Australia, I just said, yeah. I just rolled with it. But to hear the singing and the drums, and every bar in Vegas was full of Brits. It was an awesome night. Not so great a night for Ricky, of course, and the fans, because he got knocked out pretty brutally by Manny Pacquiao. But I still remember the night, and for me, it's still probably the best atmosphere that I've seen at any of the big fights over there so far. It was just out of control. I would have loved to have maybe been there when he fought Floyd Mayweather. That would have been even better, I think, because obviously Mayweather really razzed up the crowd and really played on it, where Manny was so polite within the whole thing, and they ended up sort of becoming more friends than enemies, didn't they? But yeah, just a loss to sport, the sport of boxing, and especially, I suppose, over there in England with the icon that he was over there. So all the best to Ricky's family and friends and fans and everything. And now it's been finally laid to rest. And let's hope he rests in peace. So guys, having said that, hope you have an awesome Saturday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.